In a society where capitalism is powerful, how critical are we in the products we consumed? Postmodernism has been thrown a lot into discourse, especially in how it's used in the media today. This history goes back in the 1960s when Federico Fellini's A Tanya film premiered. Now it is broken through the lens of the modern cinema. But the question still remains. What does postmodernism really mean? Before we delve in, we must first know what modernism means. It is described as a break from subjectivity and tradition, which is why it invokes an alternative set of meanings in defining art. The theory suggests that everything happens for intrinsic purposes, which all adds up to one overall meaning of life. Postmodernism, on the flip side, seeks to break down this modernist framing and encourages rethinking of the relationship between text and audience through the aspect of semiotics, marking the growth of consumer lifestyle, credit and technology, and blurs the boundaries between what is real and what is simulated. Used to frame and shape the way we think about contemporary media, society, and culture, there are three postmodern approaches we are about to tackle. John Baudrillard's Consumer Society and Hyperreality, Pierre Bourdieu's Education, Taste, and Cultural Capital, and Frederick Jameson's Postmodern Parody and Pastiche. The first approach is by John Baudrillard's Consumer Society and Hyperreality. He stresses that consumption of goods is inseparable from the signification of identity. His theory revolves around two key concepts, hyperreality and the simulacrum. Who among you here have been to theme parks? Hyperreality is an inability of consciousness to distinguish reality from a simulation of reality. The fake nature of Disneyland, for example, satisfies our imagination and daydream fantasies in real life. Cinderella, Toy Story, the idea is that nothing in this world is real, but all are endless copies of reality. Now, who among you here are fond of streaming music videos? Simulacrum refers to a representation of something that creates a hyperreality becoming more real than the actual object itself. Examples of these are our favorite music videos, which rely heavily on inauthentic performances and abstract visuals. His logic states that lives are already commodified. The reason for the success of consumer culture lies in how premium brand sportswear are marketed to appeal to the individual's myth of total fulfillment in purchasing branded consumer goods. Deny it or not, we are victims of this. Now let me ask you, when was the last time you bought a branded product? Now, the next theory is Pierre Bourdieu's education, taste, and cultural capital. According to him, social class is constructed by cultural taste, and cultural taste is produced by education. And through education, an individual acquires cultural capital, giving them the ability to identify culturally noble activity. He defined consumption as a stage in the process of communication that is an act of deciphering and decoding. Consumption, being the cultural capital, determines the preference of consumers. Let's take, for example, the distinction of audience between two music press. We have two magazines here, Kerrang and Q. Kerrang invites readers to make their own judgments of taste, while Q offers artifacts that are more familiar. With this, Kerrang attracts younger male and female consumers, while Q is predominantly read by an older group of male readers. In this case, the relationship between education and taste is linked to the audience's gender and age. We can infer that readers of Kerrang can be seen as more receptive to new cultural forms because their own subject position is less fixed, while Q tends to reinforce hegemony of white middle-class patriarchal society. Our last theory is Frederick Jameson's postmodern parody and pastiche. He argues that in late capitalist society, the distinction between the real and simulated became blurred. He uses the terms parody and pastiche to discern between the varied ways in which people use, borrow, and rework cultural artifacts. To pastiche means to mimic without any satiric or other impulse that communicates difference. It is a way of paying respect or honor to great works of the past. Well, to parody means to imitate an existing original work in order to make fun of, mock, or comment on an aspect of the original. Have you seen Filipino parodies of your favorite films that made you say, LOL? Nowadays, we often see parody videos posted in our social media accounts, Facebook, Twitter, TikTok, you name it. Now, let's put these theories into the context with The Simpsons, wherein everyone is familiar, I suppose. The structure of this TV show quotes the classic era of the family sitcom, while the misadventures of its characters ridicule all forms of established authority, patriarchal, political, religious, and so much more. The Simpsons is a critic of American society and a satire on traditional sitcoms from classic family TV. This is largely due in part to its using postmodernist techniques such as hyperreality, intertextuality, and metafiction. Its use of these concepts has allowed the show to continually entertain, expose, and bring people together through a shared understanding of our world. To conclude, the symbolic meaning of commoditized cultural forms and the underlying power structures of capitalist society is a cause for concern, as it immediately used these grounds to control the consumers in terms of market preferences. Given the fragmented nature of consumer culture and the collapse of the distinction between the real and simulated, the instances of cultural resistance often take the form of inverted reality rather than the traditional notions of expression. As consumers of the 21st century community, evaluate yourself. Are you critical enough? Thank you.